We will now interview you to confirm from the responses you provide that you have achieved the required level of competence in all the attributes. Understanding and practical application of engineering. What major projects have you worked on? Mention two new technologies that you have learned over the last couple of years and explain how they have helped you complete your project. Worked on the super commercial real estate and the mixed use development projects. I learned to use ETABS, that's the extended three-dimensional analysis of building systems, and the BIM, which is the building information model. Traditional hand calculations often result in conservative designs. So using ETABS offers a more accurate analysis of structural behavior under various loading combinations. This added accuracy helps to reduce the overestimation of shear and moments, which usually leads to using too much reinforced concrete. By using beam models, it allowed me to model buildings in 3D view, and this helped speed up design reviews and detect potential clashes between electrical and mechanical utilities and structural elements. What is the most complex practical engineering challenge you have solved? What made it challenging? The most complex practical engineering challenge I faced was whilst working on the super commercial real estate project. The southern side of the site had a vehicular access, and I was instructed to leave this access open for 24 hours a day to allow fire trucks to pass through. A permanent cantilevered structure located directly above this 24-hour access posed significant safety hazards, such as falling debris during construction period. To address these challenges, I proposed a hoarding design, and this served two purposes. First, it acted as a temporary working platform, and secondly, it provided adequate protection for the roadway below. I fixed the hoarding to the footing and first floor structure and designed it to withstand wind load and construction load. New engineering skills have you recently acquired? How have you applied them to different projects? I recently learned how to use the SAP 2000, which is a common finite element analysis software. This software helped me to perform complex calculations for steel structures. I have also used this software on several projects where I analyzed and designed steel frames. What system did you develop as part of your project? List its components and how they are interconnected. On the mixed use development project, the design of the upper residential floors utilized walls for partitioning the floor into rooms. I identified potential for making good use of the walls as lateral resisting elements. To do this, I incorporated a blend of core walls and shear walls, a configuration known for its effectiveness in resisting lateral wind forces. To increase the lateral resistance of the builds, the shear wall was connected by moment-resisting elements such as beams. I selected this design based on the structural demands of high-rise buildings in typhoon-prone regions in my country. The podium levels presented challenges due to the need for open spaces typical of commercial buildings. To address this, I employed a frame structure with mega columns. The mega columns are designed to enhance the structural capacity, supporting greater loads and spanning wider areas. To ensure integration between the residential towers and the podium levels, I utilized transfer plates for connection. This structural strategy was essential for redistributing loads and providing stability across different sections of the building. And this is critical. Actually a critical component in mixed use developments. My choice of design was influenced by lessons learned from previous successful projects implementations in similar projects. What technology or technologies did you select? Whilst working on the mixed use development project, I recommended that the clients conduct wind tunnel tests. The wind effects on the two towers were analyzed using the sector method, which incorporated wind roses for various periods. Initially, data on wind speeds and turbulence intensities were gathered from a 1 to 5,000 ratio scale topography model test. This data was then used to develop wind profiles for a 1 to 500 scale proximity model of the towers. The analysis revealed that the shear forces and base moments on the towers were approximately 20% lower than the maximum values calculated on my country's wind code. The tests ensured design adjustments were based on accurate and reliable load assessments. They also helped to reduce the steel and concrete quantities required. What fundamental engineering theories or principles govern the system and component systems you developed? Please explain them. Detailed analysis indicated that as building height increases, the structure becomes more flexible and the damping ratio decreases, and this results in wind load directly impacting steel and concrete quantities required. To optimize the design and to reduce material usage, I recommended that the clients conduct wind tunnel tests. Now, wind tunnel tests were conducted in two stages. The wind effects on the two towers were analyzed using the sector method, which incorporated wind roses for various return periods. And initially, data on wind speeds and turbulence intensities were gathered from a 1 to 5,000 ratio scale topographic model test. And this data was then used to develop wind profiles for a 1 to 500 scale proximity model of the towers. What are the advantages of the technology selected compared to other technologies? Mm. The analysis I performed showed that the shear forces and the base moments on the towers are about 20% lower than the maximum values calculated under my country's wind code. And this reduction is mainly due to the shielding from nearby hills and buildings that block wind from almost all directions. However, the assumption from my country's wind code assumes that there are no obstacles near the two towers, which actually simplifies this scenario. What are the disadvantages of the technology you selected compared to the other technologies? Making preparations for wind tunnel tests involve more steps like developing models and setting up the test environment, which adds to time and cost. Additionally, the process of gathering the necessary approvals from the building department can be complex. What analysis, calculations, modeling did you carry out? I utilized the extended three-dimensional analysis of building systems. That's the ETABS. So I utilized the ETABS model for wind load analysis. I also used the SADS, so that's the structural analysis and design software model for vertical load collection and element design. The lateral load is mainly resisted by the beams, by the columns and the wall frame through the concrete slab as rigid diaphragms. And there are only column walls and primary beams in the ETABS model. The secondary beams are excluded. The ETABS model allowed for calculation of moments and shear forces, and the results were imputed into the SADS model for reinforced concrete design. And from these analyses, I produced design reports and drawings that included all assumptions, the model inputs, outputs, and necessary calculations. Who defined the test criteria for the system? The test criteria were established by a combination of the code of practice, the practice notes for authorized persons, registered structural engineers, and also registered geotechnical engineers. And during the design process, I adhered to the regulations mentioned, so the code of practice, the practice for authorized persons, and I also ensured that the building's deflection did not exceed H over 500 um, under maximum wind load conditions. In addition, the completed design was reviewed by the architects, the registered structural engineers, and also by the clients before approval by the building department. Did you participate during system testing? What were the test results? Yes, I did participate during systems testing. I actually produced the detailed test procedures for the factory acceptance test, that's the FAT, with the aid of the simulation software. Now, the factory acceptance tests were carried out at different phases of the project. I carried out the pre-factory acceptance testing of the system at the design office before the main factory acceptance test at the test platform. And this was important because it helped to prevent time wastage on debugging codes during the actual factory acceptance test. And through the pre-FAT, so that's the pre-factory acceptance test, I was able to detect some non-conformity in the test logic. And in addition, I made a note of all the test scenarios that did not yield the expected results. I'd noted why this was the case. I also referred to the notes when performing troubleshooting during the factory acceptance test at the test platform. Now, during the testing, I checked results from the software against the preliminary hand analysis, and I observed that the magnitudes of the deflection, as well as the deformed shape, and I carried out comparison of the sum of the reaction of the applied loads, and I also ensured that the loads were that were imputed equal to the output loads. And I used a simple equation to verify the results and also the criteria in the software. What is the worst that could happen during the operation of the system or structure you constructed? If the design does not meet the relevant requirements, whether it's a code or regulation, approval cannot be granted. And during the construction phase, if the work does not follow the specifications and the regulations, it can lead to quality issues and eventually accidents that can lead to serious injury or even death. It is therefore necessary for a site supervision plan to be in place. How did you incorporate safety in the design? What are the safety features of the system or structure? For the commercial real estate project, in order to prevent falling debris hazards, I proposed a hoarding design, and this served two purposes. So, first, it acted as a temporary working platform, and secondly, it provided adequate protection for the roadway below. I fixed the hoarding to the footing and first floor structure and designed it to withstand wind load and construction load. Also, during the design of permanent structures, I considered the beam joint design and provided additional rebar in the joint. This approach helped to reduce losses associated with residual risk, such as those from earthquakes. Provide an example of a time where you employed an innovative design or approach and how you ensured it was a safe design. Give an example of any challenges or resistance from the project team that you faced. How did you address the concerns? To engineer the lightest structure possible, I decided to utilize glass reinforced plastic, so that's the GRP panels, on cold formed steel joists for the floor system. These components would be manufactured locally under factory controlled procedures, and they represent the slightest and the shallowest floor option. The project team was uncomfortable with using GRP, so the glass reinforced plastic, as a material because they were unfamiliar with that material. And they also had a preconceived notion that it would fail fire requirements. To address their concerns, I employed the services of a subject matter expert in fire. So I got a fire consultant to perform a risk assessment and also a feasibility and a viability study on the use of the GRP within the facility. The results from the study established that the GRP could be used on the facility. I delivered a technical presentation to demonstrate the different flooring options available and that the GRP would permit the install of the greatest number of freezers while also avoiding costs, material wastage, and program time involved. What are other innovative features of your project? In the mixed use development project, I replaced traditional reinforced concrete water tanks with stainless steel ones. The stainless steel water tank has lighter weight, making it a more convenient material for construction. The design change not only reduced construction period, but also reduced the likelihood of leaks. Also, stainless steel tanks are more environmentally friendly and hygienic. Provide an example of where you improved the performance of an existing system. When scheduling design and build items, I employed a master program to schedule and track the process of the design and build project. I tracked the milestone dates and conditions required for consent. This helped maintain weekly project updates and minimize potential project delays. In the mixed use development projects, I replaced traditional reinforced concrete water tanks with stainless steel ones. The stainless steel water tank has lighter weight, making it more convenient for construction. The design change reduced the construction period and also reduced the likelihood of leaks. And in addition, stainless steel tanks are more environmentally friendly and hygienic. What engineering judgments did you make and how did it affect the project? As the mixed use development project approached the construction tender stage, the southern podium was still in the conceptual design stage. What this meant was that the expert review, which is a precondition for the construction permit, could not be completed. I proposed introducing a movement joint to separate the commercial area from the rest of the structure. This decision ensured that the non commercial section passed the expert review on time, and this kept the project on schedule and it safeguarded critical design and construction milestones. What exactly did you do? What engineering judgments did you make? Why did you choose option A and reject other options? Who else was involved in the decision making process? Did you execute the actions yourself, or was this contracted out to other firms? Who technically reviewed or approves your work? And what was the outcome? In the mixed use development project, I was tasked with overseeing the schematic and detailed design of superstructures. After completing the preliminary design, I discovered that the project's costs exceeded the client's budget, and the results from feasibility and viability studies that I performed showed that as the building height increased, the structure became more flexible and the damping ratio decreased. This meant that the wind load directly affected the amount of steel and concrete needed. I recommended that the client conducted a wind tunnel test, and by comparing the results of the test with the wind code, it was possible to reduce the design wind load. The wind tunnel test was conducted by subject matter experts consultants specializing in wind load studies. The analysis showed that the wind load and base moments on the towers are about 20% and 18% lower, respectively, than the maximum values calculated under the wind code. Now, this reduction is mainly due to the shielding from the nearby hills and buildings that block wind from, almost all direction. However, the assumptions from the wind code is that there are no obstacles nearby, and this simplifies the scenario. So the tests that I performed ensured that the design modifications were based on accurate and reliable load assessments, and it reduced the steel and concrete quantities required for construction. Were you involved in the whole project life cycle? In the Power Residential project, I served as the project manager and was involved throughout the entire project life cycle. The design project has a total building area of 400,000 meters square and was constructed at a cost of $400 million. dollars. During the design phase, I considered market demands and made several recommendations for the layout designs, such as increasing the balcony areas. What standards and codes did you apply? For the technical aspect, I applied the Code of Practice for Structural Use of Concrete 2013. I applied the Code of Practice for Dead and Imposed Loads, and also the Code of Practice for the Structural Use of Steel 2011. And for site management, I applied the Building Ordinance, Building Construction Regulations, and also the CAP 123B Building Regulations. Did you follow current industry best practices? Provide examples. When designing the hoarding, I confirmed that the steel members and connections were designed in accordance with the Code of Practice for Structural Use of Steel 2011. Given that the hoarding was supported by reinforced concrete beams and parapets, I assessed these beams and, based on the reaction from the steel frame, I, um, I complied with the Code of Practice for Concrete Use of Steel 2013. What were the most challenging aspects of your role? The main challenge I encountered involved managing many design and build projects within a complex approval process. To resolve this, I established an interactive sequence and outlined the necessary steps for each approval stage and used the master programs to schedule and track the process to minimize project delays. Expand on the technical aspects of the project you have implemented. Whilst working on the design of the upper residential floors as part of the mixed use development project, the walls were used to partition floors into rooms, and I identified an opportunity to make good use of these floors as lateral resistant elements. I incorporated a blend of core walls and shear walls, a configuration known for its effectiveness in resisting lateral wind forces. This choice was based on the structural demands of high rise buildings in typhoon prone regions in my country. Podium levels presented challenges due to the need for open spaces, which is typical of commercial uses. To address this, I employed a frame structure with mega columns. These mega columns are designed to enhance the structural capacity, and it supports greater loads and it spans a wider area. And finally, to ensure integration between the residential towers and the podium levels, I utilized transfer plates for connection. This structural strategy was essential for redistributing loads and providing stability across different sections of the building. And it is a critical component in mixed use development. Describe the most challenging technical report that you have had to produce or a challenging presentation that you have had to deliver. The most challenging technical report I dealt with was explaining the process and results of the wind tunnel test to the building department. My analysis showed that the wind loads and base moments on the towers were about 20% lower than the values calculated under the wind code. To effectively present my findings, I engaged the services of wind tunnel testing experts and supported the report with detailed models, including a 1 ratio 5,000 scale topographic model and a 1 ratio 500 scale model of the towers. I also explained that the lower base moments were primarily due to the shielding effects of nearby hills and buildings, which blocked wind from almost all directions. And the wind code assumes that there were no surrounding obstacles. This detailed presentation helped to reassure the building department of the project's compliance to specification and to safety requirements. Management and leadership. Give examples of continuous improvement activities you are involved with. Provide examples of how you ensured that products are delivered as per agreed quality. I introduced quality management at my company's maintenance workshop and in several other projects that I have managed. I formulated and introduced a quality policy which was consistent with ISO 9001 standards, and I created and implemented quality planning and assurance, and quality control and quality improvement. I also used quality tools like quality circles and quality audits to analyze and solve work related problems through continuous improvement. Is your company ISO 9001 accredited? What does that mean? What responsibilities are associated with this? Uh, yes, my company is ISO 9001 certified. This certification means the organization meets international standards for quality management system, that's QMS. The responsibilities include maintaining a strong QMS following the ISO 9001 requirements, performing internal and external audits, encouraging continuous improvement, and focusing on quality in products and services. How do you ensure a project is delivered on time and within budget? T- I use the PDCA, which stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act. I use that to ensure projects are delivered on time and within budget. So take the PDCA apart one at a time. So under the plan, I start with a clear master schedule and detailed discipline specific plans like the structural schedule. Under the do part, I create detailed breakdown structure, that's a WBS, and I assign competent team members to execute the tasks. Under the check aspect, I monitor progress regularly. I also involve the quantity surveying team to assess the economic feasibility and maintain tracking records. And finally, under the ACT section, I hold bi weekly meetings. And so, for instance, I hold one internal meeting and one cross departmental meeting to review the progress on the design, the approvals, the construction, and also the costs. This systematic approach ensures that the project is delivered on time. It also ensures cost control by identifying and resolving issues early. What would you do if you are behind project schedule? This would depend on the root cause. So, first, I would check the contract terms and evidence, such as the minutes of meetings, emails, site photos, or variation orders to identify the root cause. If delays are caused by my team, I will crash or fast track by employing resources as required. And if delay is not caused by my team and the delays are caused by, say, the client or and inclement weather, I will issue notices to the client, informing them of the root cause and the potential impact of the delays. Tell me what you know about project risk. Project risk is always present and can be analyzed by looking at its impact and probability. Some risks are known as residual risks, and they are unpredictable or sometimes overlooked. In complex projects, risks need continuous assessment and planning for responses if they occur. So, therefore, at the beginning, contingencies are often prepared to address unknown risks. For example, contingency plans, emergency contacts, and evacuation routes on site. Organizations' reaction when faced with risk is based on their risk tolerance. Different strategies to handle risks include avoiding, reducing, exploiting, accepting, sharing, or transferring the risks. And risks can be positive, so opportunities, or they can be negative, so threats. Can you tell me the difference between leadership and management? Leadership focuses on inspiring and influencing others to follow a vision, while management focuses on the day to day operations and processes to achieve specific goals. Provide an example of where you handled underperformance within your team. During the mixed use development project, I noticed that an assistant engineer was progressing slowly and he seemed disengaged. After discussing with him, I discovered that he was struggling with the technical aspects of the job. And to address this, I used my previous calculation reports as an educational tool to guide him. And I taught him how to effectively apply the code of practice. And this hands on approach not only helped him understand the technical requirements, but also improved his performance and engagement with the project tasks. How would you delegate responsibility during a very important project that has tight deadlines? Delegation is crucial in projects. I assign tasks based on trust and skill. For urgent projects, I give the work to trusted colleagues who handle pressure well. To develop other team members, I start by giving them less critical tasks and gradually increase their responsibilities as they prove their capabilities. However, I take personal responsibility for some sensitive items like commercial or contractual documents. Where do you sit in your company's organizational structure? The site has a full time site office management and supervision team headed by the director of the real estate department. I am a senior manager within the real estate department, and my responsibilities are comprehensive. They involve planning and supervising construction works. That depends. If the tasks are project related, I usually resort to the work breakdown structure, so the WBS, and the basic planning tools like interactive sequence and master of program. I estimate the time required for each step. Also, I maintain the schedule to track the process and to minimize delay. What is quality? What is the difference between quality assurance and quality control? What international standards govern both? Quality is the degree to which a product or service satisfies the needs and expectations of the customer. It encompasses various aspects like performance, reliability, durability, and aesthetics. Quality assurance focuses on preventing defects by designing and implementing processes and procedures to ensure products or services meet quality standards. Quality control, on the other hand, is reactive and it involves the inspection and testing of products to identify and correct defects before they reach the customer. The ISO 9000 family of standards, particularly ISO 9001, governs both quality and quality assurance. What have you done with regards to quality assurance and quality assurance plans? I implement the quality assurance process set by the organization and follow the quality assurance and quality control management plan developed for my projects. As part of planning for effective project implementation, I produce quality assurance plans for the tasks, and this follows the pre-job brief that I have with my project supervisor, and I agree a project implementation plan with her. I also produce a quality plan that includes all the tasks to be completed, the skills required to perform them, and the order in which they are to be executed. Are you involved in quality management processes? Yes, I participate in the quality management process by performing quality control checks on my projects. As part of quality assurance, an internal audit was carried out on my project. The aim of the audit was to check that I maintained an electronic task file which conformed with the quality assurance principles specified by my department. It was also to check my training records and training records of engineers that work for me. Do you support audits? Have you been audited? How did it go? I help with internal and external audits. I have been audited several times with no non-conformance reports recorded against me. Usually, the auditor makes observations, but the findings are as per my company's quality management system. A typical audit check involves whether the materials used are approved and whether the construction process follows the method statement and drawing requirements. Also, whether the documentation is well documented and whether the distribution of drawings and memos are compliant. In your opinion, what are the most important skills needed to be a competent project engineer? Confidence, transparency, and technical competence, in my opinion, are the most important skills to be a competent project engineer. What are the most important skills and qualities needed to be a project manager? For the skills, I would say being good at communicating, strong technical knowledge, and good business understanding. For the qualities, I would say to be trusted by stakeholders and colleagues, and also a strong work ethic. What are the five stages of the project life cycle? The five stages are initiation, planning, executing, monitoring and control, and closeout. Describe the most challenging project you have worked on and why was it challenging? The mixed use development project was the most challenging project because I managed a large number of design and build items with a complex approval process. Describe a time when you solved a complex project related problem. What idea did you utilize and how did you make it effective? The principal challenge was managing the approval process for many items. In order to address this, I initially familiarized myself with the independence check-in unit approval procedures and reviewed each step to estimate the time required. I also established interactive sequence of approval stages. I divided the workload among the team and assigned specific tasks to the assistant engineers and clearly communicated the scope and the expected outcomes. To monitor the progress of the design and build items, I employed a master program to schedule and track the independent check-in unit review process. This planning included milestone dates and conditions required for consent. I also maintained a weekly update meeting, and this facilitated effective management of the approval process and minimized project delays. Can you tell me about a time when your leadership skills resulted in a positive outcome? During the mixed use development project, our assistant engineer resigned due to burnout and stress. He shared his feelings with me, and I spent about 2 hours after work listening and advising him. I reminded him of the value of his work, both to the company and also to his career. And my support helped him through that very tough period. And he stayed on until the project was completed and, in fact, to quality. Can you give us an example of a tough decision you have had to make? At the construction site, I received immense pressure from the site agent. So they wanted me to remove the earthworks support system, the ELS, before backfilling due to the very tight project deadlines. Now, the approved drawings and the method statement required backfilling to 600 millimeters below the ELS, so that's the earthworks support system, first, in order to ensure stability and safety. I stood firm against this pressure and I insisted on adhering to the requirements in the approved drawings. My refusal to compromise on safety led to the project being executed safely and to quality. What methods would you use to motivate your team? What are your strengths and weaknesses? My main strength is self confidence, supported by my courage to take on new challenges. However, in an industry like ours, this can be viewed as a weakness. Now, this perspective arises because confidence and courage can lead to risk taking if not managed carefully. So, this is one reason why strict regulations and systems are essential. Commercial ability. How is your project funded? How do you negotiate for resources or additional funding? My project is mainly funded by the client using local bank loans for construction and payment of wages. I optimize structural design and prepare method statements in advance to ensure effective use of resources. If reasons behind the delay or prolongation are attributed to my team, I seek management approval to tap into the management reserve and seek extremely cost effective resources from within or outside of the organization to finish what is left and update the lessons learned register accordingly. I analyze contract variation and negotiate additional funding for the project. And in addition, I carry out reviews of contractors' monthly status report to monitor project performance and ensure that work is within project program and budget. What are the financial risks of a project? How did you manage them? Variation orders, contingency, prolongations in delivery by stakeholders, delays in obtaining approvals from authorities, and delayed payments by clients are common challenges in project management. To handle these issues, I focus on variation orders and contingencies and ensure that all project events are well documented. These records are invaluable for tracking and resolving issues. I manage risks by maintaining a live register. Risks are categorized into three levels: green, orange, and red, based on their impact and probability. Any financial risk classified as red risk is immediately escalated to top management for advice and action. What forms of contracts did you work with? FIDIC, FIDIC, which stands for Fédération Internationale des Ingénieurs Conseil. Contracts are a suite of standard forms of contracts used in international construction projects. What other forms of contracts are you aware of? New engineering contract is widely used in infrastructural works. NEC emphasizes collaboration and proactive risk management, encouraging ongoing communications between all parties. There is also the AIA, so that's the American Institute of Architects, which is popular in the US, and it focuses on clear roles and responsibilities in construction. Each type helps manage risks and outline duties to run projects smoothly. What is the difference between GCC and NEC? The general conditions of contract and NEC, the new engineering contract, are two prevalent contract forms in construction. GCC is traditional, focusing on fixed term and costs. GCC adheres to a more rigid contract enforcement and predefined scopes. NEC originates from the UK and it emphasizes collaboration, proactive risk management, and adaptability and is suitable for complex projects. NEC emphasizes encouraging ongoing communications between all parties. What is NEC? What is the difference between NEC and another traditional contract? NEC originates from the UK and it was created by the Institution of Civil Engineers, the ICE. It emphasizes collaboration, proactive risk management, and adaptability and is suitable for complex projects. It is currently at its fourth edition. Unlike traditional contracts, which often use complex legal language and are more rigid in structure, NEC contracts are written in plain language to ensure ease of understanding and implementation. They emphasize collaboration and proactive risk management and feature mechanisms like early warning system to encourage ongoing communication between all parties. This approach helps manage and mitigate risks before they escalate. Additionally, NEC contracts are highly adaptable, allowing for modifications. NEC contracts aim to achieve project outcomes more efficiently and effectively. Which contract training courses have you recently attended? In May 2024, I attended an online project management professional course called Types of Contracts in Project Management. The course explained the importance of knowing the different types of contracts. I learned about the three main types of contracts, which are the lump sum, the remeasurement, and cost plus. And each type of contract is used in different situations. What happens when there is scope creep that impacts budget? Hmm. First, I will check the contract terms and evidence, such as emails, variation orders, meeting minutes, as well as site photos to identify the root cause. Secondly, I would report to upper management and clients to solve it, or I would accept it and try to lessen its impact if the project has actually prepared extra funding, like contingency, for unexpected issues. What is the size of the project you are working on in monetary terms? 800 million US dollars. How did you communicate financial risks to stakeholders of your project? I communicated the risk during weekly progress meetings. Such risks are always recorded and sent to all stakeholders by memo or emails. What was your interface with the supply chain department while working on your project? In my project role, I worked closely with the supply chain department in two ways. So, first, by sharing details, I collaborated with the QS team on drawings and specification. This helped them to understand what materials and methods were needed, and it allowed them to accurately quote for different materials. And then in the handling of variation orders, when a client proposes changes, I ensure that the on site situation and impact are well documented. So things like an abortive work or added materials. I also document the client's sketches or verbal instructions in the form of a contract variation instruction, which is then submitted to the client for conversation into formal documents. And upon completion of the works, I ensure that the confirmation signature from the client is obtained. And also, this coordination has actually helped to ensure that the projects are managed more smoothly. And then finally, with regards to interim payment, I collaborate with the QS department to review interim payment for the design and build works. In addition to that, I cross check the completed work and materials and examine the site records to ensure that all the claimed amounts align with the payment schedule. Do you understand the procurement process within your company? Process starts with engaging approved companies on our vendor list. Each shortlisted company must ensure compliance with project requirements and company policy. As per policy, we are mandated to secure at least three proposals and weigh them against the evaluation criteria set by the company. Health, safety, and welfare. Provide examples of how you have promoted safe practices at work. During the mixed use development project, I inspected temporary works and requested risk assessments from contractors to verify that construction loads were within safe limits. For the super commercial real estate project, I prepared the hoarding design, and this has provided adequate protection for the 24-hour roadway below. I was actively involved in weekly safety walkdowns, and during the walkdowns, I thoroughly inspected equipment and safety barriers and checked lifting hooks for signs of danger or metal fatigue. And I also inspected the integrity of fences and hoarding to prevent damage during construction. What is risk? What are residual risks? ISO 31000 defines risk as how uncertainty affects goals. Risks can be positive, that's opportunities, or they can be negative, that's threats. Residual risks are unpredictable and usually overlooked. So, risks need continuous assessment and planning for responses. What is a dynamic risk assessment? Dynamic risk assessment is an ongoing process that involves continuously identifying, assessing the risk, and emphasizing real time monitoring based on changing conditions. Have you produced risk assessments? What was the outcome? Provide examples of where you have influenced others to change their attitude to health and safety. Using the principles set out in EN 31010, I carried out a risk assessment based on factors such as occupancy, financial, social, and environmental impacts, and specifically the volume and the volatility of the hazardous substances involved. I assessed the probability and severity of these risks and found that the quantities of the hazardous substances were within control quantities set by the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, so that's the DEFRA, and could be considered as low risk. This holistic assessment yielded a risk rating which allowed me to adopt an execution class of 2 because an execution class of 3 would make the design, fabrication, traceability, erection, and checking of the building's elements more expensive. On the mixed use development project, I noticed poor housekeeping towards the end of the shift. Now, this posed a potential risk for the night shift workers, and I decided to introduce good site housekeeping practices by allocating the final 30 minutes of the day and the night shifts for site cleanup. Despite the early resistance displayed from the skilled laborers to work on housekeeping tasks, I managed to change their behavior and I secured their full commitment to this initiative. Give an example of how you handled potentially hazardous situations at work. How did you reduce the exposure to hazards and what did you change? As part of a fire safety valve replacement, the fire safety shut-off valve is actuated by a fusible link. However, to detect if the valve has spuriously actuated, a proposed method was to use a mercury tilt switch on the valve arm. I was not comfortable with the use of mercury tilt switch because mercury is restricted by the restriction of hazardous substances, so the ROHS directive, due to its significant toxicity to both humans and the environment. And when released into the environment, mercury can accumulate in the food chain, particularly in fish, and it can poison the system and cause health risks through exposure. So I recommended an alternative to using the security tilt switch to eliminate exposure of mercury, which is a hazardous substance. Have you read the Engineering Council guidance on risk? What are the key stages in risk management? The Engineering Council guidance on risk include the following steps. So the first one is identification of causes, and then evaluation of the consequence, and then treatment, which involves eliminating or minimizing. And the next is monitoring of measures. And the next is recording and reporting of the status. And finally, reviewing the performance. How did you incorporate safety into system design and during project execution? On the mixed use development project, I inspected temporary works and requested risk assessments from contractors to verify that construction loads were within safe limits. For the super commercial real estate project, I designed the hoarding for the roadway and proposed adequate protection. I also designed a working platform and safety barrier. Do you have a good understanding of legislations related to safe systems at work? I have a good understanding of legislations related to safety systems at work. For example, the construction site safety regulations, that's the CAP 59, and the CAP 123, which is the building construction regulations. Can you name some legislations related to safe systems and describe what they say? Construction sites safety regulations. How often do you attend health and safety training? What was the last health and safety course you attended? I watched a recorded lecture on the ICE website titled Safety by Design, Part 2. The lectures presented the CDM regulations and how to apply safety during design. What do you know about CDM regulations? CDM regulations is construction design and management regulations. These are health and safety regulations in the United Kingdom that aim to improve the health, safety, and welfare of those working in construction projects. Sustainable development. What do you understand by sustainability? Do you take part in activities that promote sustainable development? Give examples. Sustainability is using resources and carrying out activities to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations. It aims at achieving long term balance between environmental, social, and economic considerations. To support the UN SDG goals, I implemented sustainable measures during the design and construction phases. For example, during the design phase, I introduced concrete mixes with 25% pulverized fly ash, that's PFA, to replace cement. This significantly enhanced the concrete's durability and reduced power plant byproducts. It also helped to reduce CO2 emissions. The durability also ensured less maintenance and a longer life. Additionally, wind tunnel testing optimized building designs and it helped to reduce the need for reinforced concrete and it helped lower carbon footprints from material production. Also, during the construction phase, I focused on sustainable site management by implementing soil management that prioritizes the use of excavated materials, which helped reduce transportation needs. I also implemented energy saving measures, including the installation of sensors and timers in the offices. I also selected suppliers that were local and I encouraged the use of energy saving vehicles. These practices not only minimize environmental impact but also enhanced sustainability in construction. Describe the origin, purpose, and scope of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the UN SDGs. The Sustainable Development Goals emerged from the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, which was held in Brazil back in 2012. The Sustainable Development Goals focus on climate change, environmental degradation, peace, justice, and several other initiatives. The SDGs consist of 17 goals, and each goal targets, specific areas. The goals cover a wide range of issues that relate to our daily lives. Identify which goals are most closely related to your profession and your role. Goal number 3 focuses on good health and well being. Goal number 12 focuses on responsible consumption and production. Goal number 11 focuses on sustainable cities and communities. And goal number 13 focuses on climate action. Give examples of your contributions to carbon reductions as well as other initiatives that led to reduced resource demand. Provide an example of where you considered sustainability when choosing materials for your project. I introduced the use of concrete mixes with 25% pulverized fly ash (PFA) to replace cement. This substitution not only helped to reduce power plant byproducts and other waste, which is environmentally hazardous, but it also improved concrete performance. Using PFA can lower CO2 emissions by about 20%, and this supports climate action by reducing greenhouse gas output. The enhanced durability also means less maintenance and a longer life cycle, which adds to sustainable urban infrastructure under Goal 11 of the UN SDG. Explain how your organization's policies contribute to the UN SDGs. My company's policies significantly contribute to achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the UN SDGs, firstly by installing timers and sensors at all construction sites to control electricity usage. Secondly, my company's development of a sustainability application encourages the replacement of face to face meetings with online meetings, which help to reduce unnecessary transportation. Additionally, my company prioritizes the procurement of new energy vehicles, which further supports environmental sustainable initiatives. Interpersonal skills and communication. How did you handle conflict within your team? Resolving team conflicts involves a two-step process. Firstly, I meet with each party individually to listen to their perspectives and emotions. This allows them to express themselves freely and helps me understand the core issues. Secondly, I organize a meeting assisting them in clarifying their viewpoints to the other party. This method ensures clear communication and helps in effectively resolving the conflicts. Do you show respect to colleagues? How? I always let others express themselves and I avoid interrupting them when they are speaking. Also, before responding, I make sure that I fully understand their perspective. How did you handle dispute with client? When dealing with difficult clients, I am polite and I use diplomacy. My approach is to first seek a win-win solution that benefits all stakeholders. If that fails, I focus on using the contract terms to handle the dispute. Describe your communication style during the management of a project. My communication method is a clear and simple one that allows each party to express themselves. I also apply an open door policy that makes communication transparent and ensures all stakeholders are respected. What is the relevant legislation and your employer's policies with respect to diversity and inclusion? My company has implemented laws and regulations to combat discrimination based on race, nationality, gender, and religion. These laws ensure that everyone is treated equally and has the same opportunities. My company also encourages the support for diversity and inclusion in the workplaces. This includes promoting equal employment chances, fighting gender bias, and creating a work environment where people from various backgrounds can succeed. Professional commitment. How do you keep abreast of the latest trends in your industry? By reading the news and by attending conferences, seminars, and other industry events hosted by professional institutions like the IET, the IMECE, and the ICE. Provide examples of where you did not yield to pressure or accept substandard work. At the construction site, the site agent pressured me to remove the ELS, that's the Earthworks Support System, before backfilling due to tight deadlines. The original plan required backfilling to 500 millimeters below the ELS, which helps to ensure stability and safety. I stood firm against this pressure, and I insisted on adhering to the established safety protocols detailed in the plans. My refusal to compromise on safety standards led to the project being executed correctly, following the specified requirements in the drawings and thus maintaining both safety and integrity of the construction process. Do you attend events related to your professional body? Which ones have you attended recently? Which communities under your professional body do you belong to? I watched the ICE Presidential Address 2024 online, and it provided me with a deeper insight into the infrastructure strategy for a sustainable future. And it made me realize that as an engineer, my career path must be constantly reviewed, analyzed, and adjusted. Are you a volunteer for your professional body? Provide examples of where you have volunteered. Yes, I am a volunteer for my professional body, which is the ICE. I also frequently provide mentorship support to my younger engineers. I help them by teaching and researching issues together with them, and it actually helps them with their professional development. Yes, I have a development action plan and I update it regularly. What key short term or long term development plans do you have in place? My short term plans are focused on becoming a chartered engineer. My medium term plan is to be an engineering manager in my company and also to provide mentorship to less experienced engineers and help them to achieve chartered engineer status with the ICE. My long term plan is to become a fellow of the ICE. If you notice a design flaw in a completed engineering project, what would you do? If I noticed a design flaw in a completed engineering project, I will assess, report, and rectify it within my scope of capability and authorization. I believe that engineers are legally liable for their designs, even after that period of design. We as engineers must report flaws for the sake of our reputation, and it's also an ethical duty for us. What steps are you taking to broaden your scope of expertise? For example, research in other sectors. I am always expanding my skill set by reading the latest news and by attending seminars. For example, I recently attended the seminar titled Smart Construction Sites, which was held by my company, and I gained knowledge about the advanced technologies on monitoring site activities. In addition, I engage in technical discussion sessions with my colleagues. These sessions actually enhances my skills, and by engaging in those discussions, I'm actually contributing to the collective expertise within my team. Do you know the rules and regulations code of conduct, and professional bodies' policies around ethics? Yes, I have a good knowledge of my country's rules and regulations pertaining to my profession and the industry. I also have a good knowledge of the ICE Code of Conduct and the policies around ethics. Have you read and do you understand your professional body's code of conduct? Do you comply with it? Yes, I understand and comply with the ICE's code of conduct. Why do you want to become a chartered engineer with the ICE? Hmm. I would like to become a chartered engineer to further advance in my career and also to fulfill one of my main professional development goals, which is to become a chartered engineer. It is the single most important document that explains the ICE's role and how it is run, and from where its power and authority is derived. The Charter of 1975 was granted by the late Queen Elizabeth. The ICE's charitable object is set out in its real charter object, which is to foster and promote the art and science of civil engineering. What is the purpose and role of the ICE in the society, and how do your work and activities relate to this? The ICE has a wide array of roles, ranging from professional development and education, promoting innovation and best practices, safety and public welfare, infrastructure development, and the environmental aspects. As a civil engineer, my work and activities can directly relate to the purpose and role of the institution of civil engineers in several ways. For example, by sharing my experience with fellow members who can contribute to the advancement of best practice, by incorporating sustainable activities into our projects. This aligns with the ICE's focus on environmental responsibility. What is the role of the ICE in the award of professional engineering qualification? The ICE conducts a rigorous professional review process for individuals seeking chartered engineer status. The ICE ensures that individuals who hold the charter engineer title have met professional standards and have the necessary skills and knowledge. This benefits both the individuals and the engineering profession as it helps maintain the high quality and reputation of the industry. After becoming a chartered engineer, how do you plan to continue with your personal development? I plan to expand my skills further by working on more challenging projects and by mentoring and coaching other aspiring engineers and help them to achieve chartered status with the ICE. I also plan to become an ICE champion within my organization to help talented engineers who are serious and committed and help them plan to become chartered engineers with the ICE. In addition, I plan to become a professional registration mentor for candidates working towards achieving chartered status with the ICE. Provide examples of where you have applied ethical principles at work. At the construction site, the site agent pressured me to remove the ELS, which is the earthworks support system, before backfilling due to tight schedules. And the approved drawings and method statements required backfilling to 500 millimeters below the ELS in order to ensure stability and safety. I stood firm against this pressure and I insisted on adhering to the required um, standards in the approved drawings, and my refusal to compromise on safety led to the project being executed correctly and safely. Could you describe a time when you led by example? I led the skilled and unskilled staff on site during housekeeping activities. The housekeeping activities occurred during the last 30 minutes of the day shift. I led by example by personally performing the housekeeping with the team and made them to understand that safety and housekeeping is the responsibility of everyone, no matter what their background or position in the project is. I personally believe that by leading by example, it is a very powerful tool which can be used to help alter the behavior of people on site and also to inspire change in behaviors. When have you done the right thing under pressure? The construction sites, the site agents put plenty of pressure on me to remove the earthwork support systems before backfilling because of the tight schedules that we were working towards. And I stood firm. I resisted this pressure and insisted on adhering to the required approved standards in the specification. My refusal to compromise on safety led to the project being executed correctly and safely. I would request to be guided by a competent person who would train me. This happened to me on my first building project where I was given a task to design temporary works. I did not feel confident enough at that time. I informed my supervisor and he gave me his previous design report as an education tool for me. What is the purpose of the ICE Code of Conduct? Mention the rules of professional conduct.
Have you read and do you understand your professional body's code of conduct? Do you comply with it? So why do you want to become a member of this professional body? Do you know the history of this professional body? Do you know how this professional body is governed? What is the Royal Charter? What is the purpose and the role of this professional body for society? How would you handle any conflicts or ambiguities in the codes of conduct of the engineering council or your professional body and that of the company you work for? So, which code of conduct would you comply with as a matter of priority and why? After becoming a chartered engineer, how do you plan to continue with your personal development? Provide examples of where you have applied ethical principles at work. Can you describe a time when you led by example? Can you provide an example of where you've done the right thing under pressure? What would you do if you were asked to do something you didn't feel you were competent to do? Has this ever happened to you before? And what exactly did you do?
The ICE professional conduct lays down, both for its members and for the public, the standards of professional conduct and ethical behavior by which its members should abide. The code applies to all its members, irrespective of their grade, the professional role that they fulfill, and also the countries in which they practice. So all members are expected to discharge their professional duties with integrity and uphold the reputation and dignity of the profession of civil engineer. Also, all members are expected to undertake work that they are competent to do. All members are expected to have a full regard for the public interest, particularly in relation to matters of health and safety. And all members should show due regard for the environment and for the sustainable management of natural resources. Members are expected to develop their professional knowledge and also develop others. Members should promptly notify the institution if convicted of a crime or if membership of a professional body is revoked or if they become bankrupt or if there has been a breach of the rules by another member. Also, if there is danger to others. Name one major change to the previous edition of the UK spec. The fourth edition emphasizes diversity and inclusion, incorporating it into the requirements for all registration levels. Also, the fourth edition includes more examples of evidence, making it easier for applicants to understand how to demonstrate their competence.